Alright, this is going to be a video of why IQ and IQ tests are bullshit. And like some guy said, I don't remember his name, that if IQ tests of their administrators are to be taken as any legitimate measure of potential intelligence or intelligence, then it'd be better if all intelligence testers and their stupid tests would be thrown in the Sargasso Sea. I totally agree with that. First, a little disclaimer for all you flaming radical minorities out there. I'm not racist. I'm actually using this idea to show just how goddamn ridiculous the notion that IQ has anything to do with intelligence is. I'm reading this from an old blog I actually had on it. Nobody seems to read it. Raincheck for the apocalypse.blogspot.com. Ranging for the apocalypse, one word. I think it's pretty cool. So you've heard it before. Oh, I'm really smart. My IQ's through the roof. Or X famous person, such as Albert Einstein or someone else, had an IQ of 180. Fact is, while such people may have or would have received such scores in such tests, it has no bearing on their actual intelligence. Let's start with myself. I scored above 140 on an IQ test administered by a recognized psychologist, and well over 150 when I was younger. My older one, over 140, I was actually half asleep and I didn't try for shit. So this should remove any preconceptions that I'm just jealous of other people's IQ scores, because I really genuinely don't give a shit. Honestly. Honest to God, I don't give a fuck about IQ tests, and that's it. Keep in mind, I'm not using this to brag. I'm just showing that my bias is absent. I don't have any. So IQ scores can easily go up or down depending on the state of the person at any given time or the amount that they try, which refers to my example before about how I was sleepy when I took the test. And this obviously has no bearing on intelligence, because when someone is sleepy, they may perform more poorly, but they're not going to be dumber. Did I get more intelligent? Would I have gotten more intelligent if I woke up? No. Maybe I would have been a little better of a performer, but that doesn't really make a difference in actual intelligence. And there's many sites and advertisements claiming to increase your IQ score, but ironically, this is probably actually true, because with an IQ test, even one that's just administered by a licensed psychologist and not just some bullshit online one, even though the real ones are bullshit too, it's just that, a test. Just a test, that's it. Nothing more. Get it through your head. This brings me to my next point. Better test takers will most likely score better on these tests than inferior test takers. Is this indicative of anything more than test taking skills and possible mental sharpening that is done right before the test? No. I recall about the IQ test that there was also a written section full of simple problems. I solved these quickly and easily. However, had I been able to write faster, couldn't I have gotten more done? Here's another fallacy of so-called IQ tests. It depends on how fast you can write. IQ tests have also been used to determine the supposed genetics of intelligence. While some people may be more inclined, or occasionally extremely more inclined, like Einstein, towards certain areas of intelligence, there's another major fallacy, Of course, kids in a modern adjusted society are going to have higher scores on a test that's biased towards modern society and what modern society perceives as so-called intelligence in the first place, than the kids that are lazier or less adjusted, or kids of lazy parents, or kids in third world countries, or kids in run-down conditions, like in the ghetto. Going back to my criticism of biological predestination, this provides an easy way to overlook types of intelligences that are not directly beneficial to society's produce turbo-capitalist mindset, but obviously could do a lot of good in other areas, obviously thwart this kind of system. It's largely why you see the cynicism of high-level intellectuals completely overlooked in schooling, like Einstein, Henry David Thoreau, Thomas Jefferson. They were all very cynical of modern society, yet you get the picture that Einstein was just some brainiac. Instead, you only see their completely objective, or supposedly objective, contributions examined, like with Einstein's theory of relativity. If people were to realize that those who were supposedly the best contributors to society had the most harsh words for it and disliked it in a lot of ways, maybe they wouldn't have such a rosy vision of the world and be so mindlessly compliant. It's just too heavy for most kids to endure, but I'd say it's more important to get them educated than keep them in their comfort zone as they grow up to be morons, which is what you're seeing in our country today. IQ scores have also been used to justify arrogance, which is clearly on the basis of believing oneself to be innately more intelligent. They are also used for the converse, and I'll explain this. Most people have their heads largely in the sand with regards to the world and how people act, and probably could act a lot more intelligent and critically thinking than they do now. I honestly believe that most people have much more intellectual potential than they realize. Of course, some people may have a higher level in some area, or even many areas, but much of this may just be developed, and I'm sure even an average person could get pretty intelligent if they gave it a shot and really went through some personal revelations. So of course there will be weaknesses and strengths, but this isn't the point. The IQ system not only instills a sense of elitism geared towards those the most adjusted to modern society and refuses to recognize this, but it also keeps people from recognizing their potential because they have determined themselves to be ho-hum, and because they're scared of acknowledging that they're doing nothing with their lives and that their potential is much greater. So it kind of puts intelligence on a hierarchy when it's not really that clear-cut. This is one of the main reasons why stupid activities and repetitive small-talk bullshit is so comforting. They're an escape from the ominous cloud of perspective and reason that hovers high over the heads of the masses. Now, onto racial intelligence. It's been long shown that the poor and those in third world countries score poorly on IQ tests, often sometimes 30 points lower, at least 20 often. Therefore, it could be thus proven that blacks and minorities are less intelligent than white people. However, obviously this is a bunch of bullshit because this assumes that IQ tests are actual legitimate tests of intelligence, and this was debunked before. Nonetheless, you'll never hear about this in classrooms or on the mainstream news because it'd be so politically incorrect, and people would rail against these IQ tests if it was shown that blacks score lower, and thus it was assumed that they're less intelligent. Unfortunately, even the victims on the end of this nonsensical fallacy often believe in it, and thus would interpret such as a statement to be something of equivalent to someone shouting, "Blacks are less intelligent than white people," instead of understanding that blacks just score lower on IQ tests because they're less adjusted to the modern job market and the modern job world. Of course, it would be a ridiculous thing to start shouting that blacks are less intelligent than white people, but IQ tests showing blacks to be less intelligent is even more ridiculous if it's used as a standard in society. The reality is that blacks and minorities, on average, tend to be poorer than whites, and perhaps less educated in a narrow way that's adjusted to the job market more. That's it. As was shown in the book Common Sense Rebellion, a highly interesting and recommended book by Bruce Levine, Walter Lippmann, who's the guy I talked about before, now I remember, he said this. I'll quote it exactly, even though I said it before. It's just a great quote. If the impression takes root that these tests really measure intelligence, that they constitute a sort of last judgment on the child's capacity, that they reveal, quote-unquote, scientifically, his predestined ability, then it would be 1,000 times better if all the intelligence testers and all their questionnaires were sunk without warning into the Sargasso Sea. And Walter Lippmann, you have my support. This video is over.